I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. Beautiful day, cold as heck, but beautiful nonetheless. Thankful for this wonderful technology allowing me and us to connect remotely. And thanks to the studio for allowing producers and programmers like me to do this show on the road or from home or different places. You know, hopefully we're going to get some warming up in the next few days, but I, for one, am of the mind that isn't this bitter cold a marvelous thing? And the wonder is that it doesn't happen all day, every day. So when it happens, we have to learn to appreciate this as well. I also am appreciating the fact that our country seems to be moving towards responding properly to the massive threat of COVID-19. I continue to salute all the first responders, the medical and health field workers and professionals who are going above and beyond the duty to support individuals and communities, to the science and to the research that has gone into record-breaking introduction of therapies and vaccines. And I want to applaud our state, our governor, and our state for being aggressive in deploying the vaccines to the people of Minnesota. And I want to always encourage people in my community, the African American community, communities of color, to step up. We are at higher risk, and to make sure that we do the right thing, operate with confidence, and on a principle of protecting ourselves, but also of protecting the ones we love, our neighbors, our friends, and get vaccinated. That's the message of the day. We should all get vaccinated. Well, today I'm going to be pleased to have a conversation with representatives of an organization that is dear and near to me. It's LifeSource. And I've got on the call Susan Mal Larson. She's director and partner and community relations, director of partner and community relations at the organization. And one of her colleagues is on the call as well. Her colleague is Lindsay Williams, and Lindsay Williams is the community education liaison. Susan and Lindsay, both of you, good afternoon. How are you doing? And I'm hoping that I have the connection with you here. Okay, so let me work on getting those two people on board the call. I thought they were in the waiting room here, and we'll probably get that worked out in a minute. But they work for a wonderful organization, and the organization is called LifeSource. And background-wise, LifeSource tries to facilitate organ, eye, and tissue donation between hospitals and transplant centers. They support families and patients by honoring the intentions of families to give donations or to make their organs available to support other people's lives. LifeSource is one of 58 organ procurement organizations, that's called OPO, in the U.S., and each organization has its own designated service area to facilitate the organ donation and transplantation process. And Minnesota is the center of kind of the largest geographical region inside that system. It includes Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and portions of western Wisconsin. This is, as I said, personal to me, and I'll tell you why in a couple of seconds, but some key statistics. The 75 is the number, 75 is the number of lives that one donor can save or heal. Let that soak in for a second. One person who decides to be a donor can save up to 75 lives or provide healing for 75 people. That's amazing, just that alone. Here's another number, 3,200. 3,200 is the number of Minnesotans who need a life-saving transplant right now. 3,200 people need a life-saving transplant today. Here's a third number for you to consider. 50,000. 50,000. That's the number of people per year that have their vision restored through cornea transplants. That's something you don't think about a lot, but 50,000 people have vision restored through cornea transplants. So the work of Life Source is to facilitate, to encourage, and to make that happen. And I said earlier, this is important to me personally because I have brothers who have done and benefited from this work. And oops, I'm changing my camera around. Here we go. I think my friend Clarence is on the call. Clarence, how are you doing? Yeah, good to see you.
Great, I'm here. Thank you once again. It looks like I've been on your show quite frequently, and so I'm glad that you are accepting me to do this again.
Well, it's a blessing, and I think we have some restoration to do in terms of our links with Lindsay, and but I think we'll work on that. Kelvin is there. We go. There's Lindsay and there's Susan.
All right.
Okay.
I was looking for you guys, and I said, "Oops, they're not here," but it was coming. So it's good to see you. We're live on KFAI, and we're also live to YouTube, and I think we're connecting our Facebook channels. We had some challenges today making updating passwords and links, so we're here now. That's the important thing.
Exactly.
And Clarence is my friend from years and years and years, and so he's a stellar, steady rock in the community. Clarence represents the epitome of a trusted advisor. People know him by his history of work, his integrity, and by his clarity and the conviction he brings to everything he does in the community. So it's always a pleasure to connect with you, Brother Clarence. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And so listen, Susan Mal Larson and Lindsay Williams, the format here is simply conversation. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. I'm a curious guy. And my job here is to simply be curious in this conversation with you. My goal is to create a space where you can tell the truth, tell your truth, and share your passion about what this important mission is, right? And tell it in a way that people say, yes, that means me, or I can step up, or I can step in. So that's our goal today. And I'm so glad for the opportunity. Before you guys signed on, I was going to give my personal testimony. And the testimony is in the form of acknowledging that my two brothers live right now because of organ donations. My brother Wayne and Greg, both these guys are famous. These are the famous McFarlanes. I'm the fan, but Greg, the drummer, and now a businessman in Northeast Minneapolis, and also Wayne, a musician, both of them of the famous ipso facto. Both have had kidney transplants, and I think Wayne has had a liver transplant as well. And so what it means to me is that I'm looking at and talking to and be able to kick it with and hang out and hug my brothers, and I couldn't have done it before because these guys would have been dead absent this technology and absent services like yours to help them live life. And here's the most beautiful part of this, that both Greg and Wayne were matched by nieces. So our sister Patricia, her two daughters, one Yai and one Angela, each was able to donate a kidney to an uncle. And so that's what family is, really. And that's what this whole spirit of donating and sharing and giving is. And I say that I am personally humbled and lucky as an uncle, as a brother, for this to have happened and to provided more life, extending the life of my brothers Greg and my brother Greg and Wayne. And I've seen commercials on TV with Greg and Julian. So I'm going on and on. Let me bring you guys in. Susan, how are you? No, you have to be unmuted, I think. I'm not sure if you're muted or not. but I'm not hearing you. Okay, is anybody else hearing or not hearing? Lindsay, can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
I do perfectly. So,
All right.
why don't you jump in, and then Susan will come back in.
Yeah. So what a wonderful testimony and what a great lead in. And, at LifeSource, we are just so grateful to see, um, the result of this work. This is why continuing life, allowing family members to have more time with one another, more Christmases, more birthdays. That's why we do this work. And so it's always wonderful to hear, these success stories and keeping it in the family and having that family support.
Unbelievable.
It is.
Really
It's
amazing.
unbelievable. And
Yeah.
at LifeSource, we're always really humbled by these stories of family members stepping up and saying, even just I want to check to see if maybe I'm a match for a family member, is just a wonderful thing, and what a great legacy for people to leave. So you've had this experience, what it can give to family members, and it really is the gift of life, and we're just so grateful to be able to be part of that process and to do this work and to save lives.
Talk about the history of the organization. How and when did both the technology develop so that this can be done, and how did this organization come into being? I don't know if you have the information, or Susan, but talk about it in general.
Yeah, so I think Susan would probably be a better historian for the organization and for the technology. But what I can tell you is that it's getting better all the time. We're always looking at ways to innovate and improve, and again, just to save more lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Susan, you're back now. Let's see if your microphone is working.
Can you hear me?
I
Yeah.
can perfectly.
Oh,
Thank you.
fantastic. Well, thank you. I apologize for that. Technology is a blessing and challenge. Yeah. So as Lindsay said, the technology is actually developing really, really fast. LifeSource was formed 32 years ago. And we've just been privileged for those 32 years to care for families of donors, and to help save lives through transplantation. Donation and transplant is pretty young. The first heart transplant in the world was in 1967. And so
Christian Bernard, right?
yes, fantastic.
Dr. Christian Bernard in South Africa. I remember
That's right. Yep. You have a good memory and a good knowledge of transplant. So from Dr. Bernard till today, the things that we can do with transplant have just expanded significantly. In fact, over the past year, a couple of the innovations we've done is now we can transplant organs from patients who are positive for hepatitis, because they will go into a recipient with hepatitis. We actually now are transplanting organs from patients who die who are HIV positive, if they're going into an HIV positive recipient. So we continue to find new ways to help people in need.
And so the concept for transplant, talk about the science a little bit. If you can either remember from your research, when did we begin to know about the possibility of extending life by transplants?
Yeah, well, the first cornea transplant, I believe, was in don't quote me, I'm going to say 1904, something like that. So cornea transplants was the first successful. And then through the 20th century, there was a lot of science, a lot of studies. It was 1954 that there was the first successful human kidney transplant between identical twins. So what an amazing thing, if you think about it, that you had one twin who was healthy and had two kidneys and one who did not have a working kidney. So they could do that transplant. From there, then they had to develop, which you know very well from your brothers, kind of the immunosuppressants and all the science and medicine that would help make sure that when people receive the gift of transplant, they continue to live and do well. So all of that really was happening, I would say, in the 1960s to the 1990s, probably is when that really happened. And in Minnesota, we're really fortunate. The University of Minnesota and Hennepin County Medical Center were both leaders in this. So really brought transplantation into the modern age and made it a therapy that really is available to anybody who's suffering from organ failure.
Mhm. And so the challenge is to continue to educate people, to get people to know what they can do, both as potentially a recipient, but equally important, obviously, as a donor. And Clarence, let me bring this to you because, again, you work in that area of trust in the community. What are the barriers? What misconceptions do our people have that make us a little slow to respond to? And what can we do in conversations like this to answer questions and give people, the confidence and, in fact, the inspiration? Because I think a lot of people say, oh, yeah, it's a good idea, but then you got to act on it, right? And so how do we have that kind of conversation, Clarence, to educate, inform, and move our people forward? What do you think?
Well, I think that the a key issue, as you just talked about, is the fact about trust.
Mhm.
So many misconceptions and myths have been out there about organ donation and organ transplant. To the extent that if you're in an accident, somebody will let you die, or that you only want to give your organs to somebody like yourself because they're the only ones that could receive it. So there's a lot of misconceptions about that, and so part of why I'm here and why we're here is that we know that there's a great need in our community for organ transplants. And part
Mhm.
of what we have to do is to figure out ways in which we could do this. And I just want to say, and I know Susan will talk about this a little bit later, is that we've been working in community for more than 20 years around this issue of organ and tissue donation and have had a phenomenal amount of community engagement. And what we want to do coming up in March is we're going to have a celebration, a 20-year celebration of our partners, and to talk about what we have done in order to help our community, African American community specifically, to be more engaged in this issue around organ and tissue donation.
Great. That's great. So, Susan, the organization here in Minnesota, where are you located? How do people connect with you? And, if there's a curiosity, how do you respond to getting people to explore their feelings and to gain knowledge about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lindsay and I work with LifeSource, and LifeSource is the community-based nonprofit organization that manages organ and tissue donation in 3 states: Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. We are based in North Minneapolis,
Mhm.
kind of by Broadway Pizza, if everybody knows where that is, off of West Broadway. And so if people want to know more, they could go to our website, life-source.org. They could call us. Unfortunately, it's COVID. Pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of work in the community. We were also opening our doors. So LifeSource moved to North Minneapolis 6 years ago with this purpose, to really be part of the community and to be transparent and make sure that people want information about donation, we're there for them and they can get to know us. And so we had a lot of opportunities to bring people into our building. We're looking forward to doing that again when we get out of this pandemic. But certainly we welcome anybody at any time to call us or reach out to us. And in addition to the opportunity for us to share information about donation, we really have a commitment to listening, and we want people to reach out and share what are their concerns, what are their barriers, how can we help, and how can we best support the community and support families in donation.
Lindsay, what are you coming across as you go out doing community outreach? What's the nature of your work? How do you get community involved and supportive of this work?
Yeah, so my job is to really just try to get in front of as many people as possible and answer their questions. I
Mhm.
always say, I'm not here to convince anybody of everything. I'm here as a resource to answer people's questions. And what I have come to know to be true in the 5 years that I've been privileged enough to do this work, is that when people have concerns about organ donation, it really comes from the fact that this is something you don't think about until you have to.
Mhm.
And if you aren't familiar with it, it sounds like science fiction. Which is why I have the job that I have, to get in front of people and try to normalize this conversation, get people talking about it. Talk to your family members about it. What do they have to say? And if it's not for you, that's fine. But why? Let's have that conversation, and I'm always happy to be here to answer people's questions. But what I know to be true after talking with people and really answering the questions that they have is that organ donation is so in line with so many people's values. Um, and so many, I think when we talk about community, so many communities see themselves and know themselves to be one that helps one another. And organ donation is something that does that. I think that the main barrier is just that lack of understanding. And like I said, that's why I'm here. I just want to answer people's questions so that they can make the right decision for themselves.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Listening here on KFAI, and you watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you've got a question or comment on YouTube or Facebook, put it in the conversation or the comment area, and we'll try to bring you into the conversation. And if you're on Facebook, I think we're monitoring that. Well, we're trying to anyway. But my guests today are Susan Mao Larson and Lindsay Williams. They both are with LifeSource Minnesota, a wonderful organization that facilitates organ and tissue donation and transplant work. And they're based in North Minneapolis. Also on the program is my friend Clarence Jones. Clarence Jones heads a project called the Human. I call it the Human Project. You can give me the formal name, Clarence.
Human Partnership.
Human Partnership, but they do wonderful work in bringing organizations and activities together to both explain and connect, to facilitate and support the health and well-being of our community. One of the things that Clarence has been a champion of is, I call it data-driven decision-making in our community. And he's been doing marvelous projects with partners, including the University of Minnesota and others, to gather research. And the principle is to do the research that emanates from the community, that reflects the articulated vision and interest of the community, and that in its nature is committed to bringing the results back to the community for the demonstrable benefit of the community. And that in the face of, and as an antidote to the fears created by, in history, are people feeling that we were subjects of research, but never the actual and or intentional beneficiaries, because our voice wasn't a part of the makeup of the decisions that guided that research. Clarence is doing a great job in educating the public about how we use data, why we should participate, and how we are part of the managing of the studies as well as the beneficiary of it, because we're at the table. So thank you, Clarence, for all being here. I think we have a video that you guys sent me that talks about your work. It may be the one with was that the one with my brother's in it? Susan, do you know?
Yes,
and so,
that's your brother, Greg. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kelvin, if you can play that, I think we can, it's visual, but I think the people on the radio can hear it too. Hear it anyway. Let's see how it goes. No, I'm seeing but not hearing anything, Calvin. And until we get the audio part, it was pictures of a conversation with my brother Greg McFarlane, and pictures of the band Ipso Facto playing, but it's inspiring visually. Let's try it again.
My name is Greg McFarlane. I am the drummer for Ipso Facto, a reggae band that's been around for a long time, and I am a kidney recipient. I found out that I had kidney failure by going to the emergency room for another problem, and they told me then that I had end-stage kidney failure. The next step was to wrap my head around the fact that I've just been taken from the normal people over to the sick people. And so it took me a while to adjust to that. From being a rock and roller, my days started at about 7 o'clock at night all my life. So for me to go to bed at 8 o'clock is unheard of, and I thought it would be probably impossible. But there's something about what happens in the universe that allows everything to fall in place and in the right time, in the right season. I led a pretty hard life. So to be able to get through it and then give an opportunity to be reborn again is how I feel. Is more than I could ever ask for. My life is completely fulfilled in many ways and in ways that I could not have imagined to be. So that's why when I'm asked to do things for Life Source, that I jump on it, because what Life Source is doing is bringing in awareness that I think at the level that hasn't been done before. You know, interestingly enough, I kind of thought about this a few years ago. What if it became a conversation, an everyday conversation about organ donation? That it wasn't had any mystique about it or fear. It's just a yes or a no. Are you willing? Why not? Whatever it is, we respect it, but at least let's have a conversation about it. So as far as, you know, thinking about this thing about anybody can do it, I need to be a part of trying to let people know that anyone can do it. I see a world with most people being organ donors, making it be a common practice. You know, the more people that are realizing that their family, their cousins, their daughters are being affected by this sort of thing, when we begin to think about people, humanity as a whole, and get further and further away from our individualistic outtake on things. Because at some point, we're gonna have to know that it takes all of us to get through this thing.
That is amazing. I'm so proud of him, and what a rich voice. I mean, I could listen to him all day and all night. Just the depth of sincerity that just flows out of that storytelling. You know, that was wonderful. That's great. Yeah, and so what reactions do people get from that, Susan?
Well, first, I want to say just gratitude. We are so grateful that he would take the time to share his experience. And I think very positive reactions. You said it right. The way he tells the story and how it flows from him. He talks about humanity, and that is really compelling. We often think about transplantation happens at the intersection of science and humanity. And that's what makes it unique and beautiful. And he really articulates that in a lovely way.
I wish I could send a link to him now and ask him to join this call. I don't know. Kelvin, I'm going to ask you to, in the chat, to send a note over to Greg and to Wayne if you have their emails, or I'll put it in the chat. It'd be great to have their voices on. Lindsay, what was your impression of that piece? Again, I'm so impressed. How does it affect you?
Oh, yeah, like Susan said, just so much gratitude for him to be willing to use his voice and his celebrity to carry this message of donation. You know, we can't do this work without the help of partners like Greg, partners like you, partners like Clarence, absolutely. You know, people who recognize that this is important and want to help their community. And I always, when he talks about going from being one of the regular people to kind of being like, now I'm one of the sick people, that really always puts in perspective for me, you know, this could be anybody. This really could be anybody. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. Just the genuineness of him sharing that story. We're just so lucky to have these partners and people carrying this message.
So let me take a break and ask you to tell me your personal stories. Lindsay, you said you've been with the organization 5 years.
Yeah.
Let me discover who you are. And Susan Mel Larson, same question. What's your own personal story? How did you come to this work? And what is the foundation for your passion? And how this is in alignment with your sense of being? That's what I'm feeling. And if I'm feeling it properly, go ahead and talk about that, Lindsay, and then Susan.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. So, working in organ, eye, and tissue donation is not something that I ever considered before that opportunity was placed in front of me. And once I understood the need and knowing that my communities of color, see such high rates of need, but folks aren't always saying yes as often, and that I have the ability to help educate and help people, make the decision for themselves. I had a lot of questions for LifeSource before I was ready to sign on, but once I knew that everything was on the up and up, I really wanted to get in and to help. And for me, it was personal because my mother had a brain aneurysm. Um, I think 6 years ago now, and so I had the experience of being in a hospital, having had someone that I love experience a extremely surprising kind of out of nowhere medical emergency, and standing in a hospital room thinking, we haven't talked about this.
Mhm.
I don't know what she wants.
Mhm.
If she leaves this world, we haven't had this conversation. And I know from my own personal experience that having that conversation, as much as it feels like it's going to be uncomfortable, is a lot easier than standing in a hospital and not knowing what you're supposed to do next. Now, we're incredibly lucky. My mom is fine. She
Glad to
recovered
hear
from
that.
her, yeah, she recovered from her brain aneurysm, which, we just thank God for every day that we've got. Um, but like I said, I had that experience of not knowing what what I should do. And you better believe that after that experience, I had that conversation with my mom, I had that conversation with my dad, had that conversation with my brother and my husband, and I know what every person in my life wants after if they're to leave before I do. And there is a certain amount of peace and comfort that comes in that, just having that conversation.
Susan?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I actually have had the privilege to work at LifeSource for 20 years. So one of the first people I met after I started was Clarence, and we talked about how we can partner. So he's been a tremendous partner and support and mentor for all of that time. Like Lindsay, when I came to LifeSource, I really didn't know what I was getting into, but what I learned pretty quickly and what has stuck with me every single day is the immense generosity of the donors and their families, and these people who suffer a tragic loss but let us into their lives, and reach out and help people that they don't know, that they'll never meet. And I'm just humbled each day to think about all those individuals that I've had the chance to meet through the year and their giving nature. And I think that's really a remarkable thing, and it's an honor to be a part of that.
Clarence, why don't you talk about this whole thing? 20 years meeting Susan. Your impressions, your thoughts.
Yeah, so let me tell you the quick story. Dr. Connie Price, who was a doctor in St. Paul, was a heart recipient. She was a sister. She was a heart recipient. And she decided that she wanted to start a foundation or give some money to a foundation around health. And so I was a part of the Pan-African Community Endowment Fund. And she wanted to give money to the Pan-African Community Endowment Fund. And so we had this long conversation with Norman Harrington, as well as Sean Lewis, as well as many other people that I can start dropping names who we started talking about how then could we utilize this money to help our community. And so because she was a heart recipient, we went to LifeSource to just kind of check them out to see if this was where we would like to utilize the money for this fund. And that's how I got a chance to meet Susan and talk with her and Susan Gunderson and other people who were at LifeSource. And so what we did was we created this conversation and we created this relationship. We talked about it. And interesting enough, the night that the day that Connie gave her money was the same day that she died. and we were having an event that same night, and so it was quite sad to be there with the children, but everybody was also very excited and very happy that it happened. So that's how we started off with this. The flipping to a little bit later, we had the opportunity to take a look. I think HRSA came to us and asked LifeSource why weren't African Americans consenting to organ donation, and so we actually got a grant to take a look at why African Americans wasn't consenting to organ donation. And the first person that I contacted was this guy named Kevin Jenkins, who I think you probably know. Kevin had been on YouTube for like 3-4 years talking about he needed a kidney. I kept turning, every time I saw him, I turned the channel, I wasn't gonna give up my kidney, but he was persistent. And so when we had the opportunity to talk about how do we help our community, he was the first person that I talked to. And Sean Lewis was also one of the first people that I talked to. So I think that was how we started. We started off, we were always going to be committed to community. And that was one of the things that we spent a long time vetting LifeSource. LifeSource spent a long time vetting us to kind of find out whether or not we were going to work together. And as you can tell right now, we're talking about 20 years. And we are getting ready to celebrate that 20-year celebration and honor the people that have helped us throughout this period. I think that to me is when I feel the happiest, is when I know that we have sincerely worked with our organization or worked with our community, and whether we had money or not, we were there, and they were there. And so that for me is kind of the place where we're at right now. So that's how I got in, and they've been one of the best organizations I've ever worked with. I say that all the time, and I just believe in our community, and I believe in working with them.
I was so glad to hear you mention Dr. Connie Price's name. She was a dear friend of mine.
Was she?
And I haven't, just her memory just brings good feelings. Connie's son was an intern with me. And that's how this thing just goes across generations. So she was one of the guides in my professional development. And as I moved on, I had the chance to bring her son on in a role that I had at a corporation as an intern. And so it was paying it back and paying it forward at the same time. But Connie was also always a wonderful person. Well, these relationships matter. These relationships, they mean the world, and Susan, I have to tell you that we, Insight News, have been one of the organizations that you've worked with to host events at your beautiful facility there on the river. We did, I think, one of our closing ceremonies for the Insight to Health Fitness Challenge at your location. And I still remember how people were impressed and pleased to have the availability of that beautiful location. So it says something when your intention is to show up and to show up in the right place and to mean what you say and deliver on the promise. So that's a wonderful thing as well. I did reach out to my brother, Greg, and I think we sent the link to him. He might join the call if he's able to. I'm not sure that he can, but I told him we're on the radio live right now. And if he gets a minute, try to jump on the call, that we had just played his video and that I was so impressed with it. So hopefully he'll call in. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, broadcasting live on KFAI and live to YouTube and Facebook, and having a wonderful conversation about the work of LifeSource. My guests include Susan Mao Larson, who is the director of, and I'll let you fill in the title, Susan.
The director of partner and community relations. So work with our communities and our hospital.
And Lindsay Williams, you fill in the title again, Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm the community education liaison. I'm here to answer people's questions about organ, eye, and tissue donation.
Great. And my friend Clarence Jones, Clarence with Human Partnerships, a wonderful organization. And so, what is the need going forward? What is the vision? What would be the optimum situation in terms of if our people, Lindsay, I like the way you said it, that this work is in alignment with the values of our families and of our individuals, and that so the barrier is just not knowing, right? And which is why your work is so important why this conversation is so important, because we're delivering the knowledge, the awareness, and the clarity and the simplicity of all of this life-saving strategy in ways that people can grab and embrace. So what is our aim, Lindsay, in having an aware public where individuals recognize that their own personal values are in alignment with the deliverables, the possibilities that Life Source enables? What do you think?
I think the work that we've been doing now that, in a regular year, I'm out with Clarence in the community, talking to folks, handing out education materials, answering questions. This year has been different. We're not able to do that. And we've spent a lot of time looking at just questions around organ donation that people are asking. I have a lot of experience with this. I have a pretty good idea of what questions people have. And we've actually built a pretty good resource for folks. On our website. We have a blog that answers questions like, what is the difference between a coma and brain death? Does race matter when it comes to organ donation? And we just, we're putting together information that people are asking about, that people are looking for. And I think, if you have the time, if people that are listening and watching are curious, go ahead and Google, go to our website, life-source.org, and look at what we've put together. We are doing our best all the time to just make this organ donation process as transparent as possible, to just remove as many of those barriers as possible. And I would just really encourage people, because of the work that I'm grateful to be a part of, but because of my own life experience, have a conversation with the people that you care about what they want. And whether that's organ donation or not, I would just encourage folks to really have that conversation.
And so we're now, obviously, as you mentioned, operating in the age of COVID-19, the stress that places on all of us. How does that affect your work? How has it affected your work? And what do you envision as the nation and the world come through this global challenge of the pandemic? What has happened in the past year, and what will change in the future based on, the scars or the impact, but also the science that's come out of resisting and responding to addressing COVID-19. Susan, what do you think?
Yeah, so how it's impacted our work is not as significantly as we anticipated. Certainly, when someone's COVID positive, when they die, they can't be a donor. So that has been difficult on so many levels. What we did see last year was families of individuals who could donate being very generous and saying yes. It felt like people were seeking something positive and some legacy. But it was difficult. We were having conversations over Zoom, families weren't able to gather, so it was more difficult, but people were very generous. So donation moved forward. What my hope is as we go forward is that generosity will continue. I think it will. And as we get COVID under control, we won't have the challenges with people dying at such significant rates of such a horrible virus.
What do you think, though, that we're learning as a society? Clarence, you can jump in here about COVID-19. I think part of it in the Black community is moving beyond reticence and resistance based in our lived experiences of being disadvantaged by institutions. That's real. And so, but we also know that we have to keep moving, right? And but move with being awake, being woke, and being clear, and being able to speak in our own interest, and to speak without fear of being looked at the wrong way or dismissed. Our experience has been one of, as a culture and individuals, being devalued and dismissed out of hand because the structure had the power and enabled individuals to do that. But that has changed and is changing. And so where do you see us going, Brother Clarence? You have to unmute, Clarence. Yeah.
Thank you. I believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has really allowed us to become more reflective, to begin to think about what's going on, but also to begin to strategize and to plan how do we move ahead. I believe that the experiences that we have gone through have helped us understand why it's so important for us to be engaged, not only politically, but also socially, even though we have some limitations in terms of how we can interface with one another. I believe that the importance of being engaged in a positive manner is enforced as a result of this. And so I look forward to I'm very careful about, I'm looking forward to a more aware society, but I'm also looking forward to the opportunity for us to be more engaged in this work. And so for me, it's a phenomenal opportunity. At the same time, there's some great challenges that we also have to face.
Could I add something
Let
to
me
that?
ask you, please. Yeah.
Yeah, just on behalf of LifeSource,
Go
I want to say, yeah, very humbly, I would say COVID-19, as well as the George Floyd murder, put a magnifying glass on disparities. And while LifeSource has had this commitment to the community for 20 years, we understand that we really need to elevate this in a meaningful way. So that's where we are as an organization, is really working hard to do this differently and to really engage more meaningfully.
Well, that's wonderful. And so I think that's true across the board. And I think we have to talk about that as well. I think every sector of society is being required and is given the opportunity to reflect on why things are the way they are, and why and how have we failed, even though we've had so many marvelous advances in society, in culture, and technology. There have been blaring inconsistencies and intentional or unintentional blocks to the full benefit of all of our advancement to all sectors of society. And I think both the COVID-19 pandemic and the George Floyd murder and the rebellions that came out of that require us and invite us to look anew and to be introspective individually and as a society and as the world, to see what can we do differently and how have we not lived up to the best of what we can be, and how can we redouble, and rethink and redo. That's what I'm thinking. How do you feel about that? How do you guys feel?
I would agree. I want to make sure I say this before we end, but I think it brought new light too. I hope that post COVID, whenever that is, I hope that there is a new appreciation for our folks working in the public health sector, folks like Clarence. Because I know that when this all started, I'm getting emails from Clarence and he's trying to connect this organization and this person and try to get them what they need and answer this question. And, this is, he's such a great connector, and it's all for, the betterment of the community. He's just trying to help other people solve problems. And that is what he's done for LifeSource. And he's just been such a fantastic partner, and just to all of our community health folks, but for us at LifeSource, especially Clarence, thank you. And I hope that that people really recognize that now and moving forward.
Great. You know what I want to do? I think I want to close by playing that piece with Greg again. I was so glad to see that. And if you all don't mind, I'd love to play it again. Thumbs up from Clarence. Kelvin, are you there? If you can cue up that piece again, let me know. Because I think it was such a good piece and the spirit of it was so great. Thanks, Susan, for your thumbs up. Let me thank Susan Mal Larson and Lindsay Williams, and thanks to Clarence Jones, all of you for this wonderful conversation. Let me praise you for the work that you do, the intensity and passion you bring to the work. And let's keep up the good work and keep connected with me here on this show and with Inside News. We are here to support you, the vision, the work, and we're happy to do so. We thank you so much. So, Kelvin, are you able to? Here it is. So here's, we're going to replay the piece with Greg McFarlane. The opens with the billboard that says live on Talk Donation. Go ahead and start, Kelvin.
My name is Greg McFarlane. I am the drummer for Ipso Facto, a reggae band that's been around for a long time, and I am a kidney recipient. I found out that I had kidney failure by going to an emergency room for another problem, and they told me then that I had end-stage kidney failure. The next step was to wrap my head around the fact that I've just been taken from the normal people over to the sick people. And so it took me a while to adjust to that. From being a rock and roller, my days started at about 7 o'clock at night all my life. So for me to go to bed at 8 o'clock is unheard of, and I thought it would be probably impossible. But there's something about what happens in the universe that allows everything to fall in place, and in the right time, in the right season. I led a pretty hard life. So to be able to get through it and then give it opportunity to be reborn again is how I feel, is more than I could ever ask for. My life is completely fulfilled in many ways, and in ways that I could not have imagined to be. So that's why when I'm asked to do things for Life Source, that I jump on it, because what Life Source is doing is bringing an awareness that I think at the level that hasn't been done before. You know, interestingly enough, I kind of thought about this a few years ago. What if it became a conversation, an everyday conversation about organ donation? That it wasn't had any mystique about it or fear. It's just a yes or a no. Are you willing? Why not? Whatever it is, we respect it, but at least let's have a conversation about it. So as far as, thinking about anybody can do it, I need to be a part of trying to let people know that anyone can do it. I see a world with most people being organ donors, making it be a common practice. The more people that are realizing that their family, their cousins, their daughters are being affected by this sort of thing, when we begin to think about people, humanity as a whole, and get further and further away from our individualistic outtake on things. Because at some point, we're gonna have to know that it takes all of us to get through this thing.
Well, that was so good. Thank you all for being here. Again, thanks to my brother Greg. The video was awesome. The image behind the video included at the end Greg and Wayne and our sister Patricia and her 3 daughters, 2 of whom donated kidneys to their uncles, Greg and their uncle Wayne. Listen, we're out of time. This has been a great show. Hope you liked it. And we do this. We want you to know that Greg just sent me a note saying, let you all know that he's in contact with your marketing people at Life Source in order to put on a benefit concert. So that's something we can all look forward to and get behind and support. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
draws near, I rise and say my prayer. Little piece of bread to my mouth, little tea to wash it out. It's my daily tribulation, even though I'm a working man. I work so hard to make ends meet, with one suit and one shoe to my feet. Days are getting so hard, yeah, but I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. On my 9 to 5, working till sun goes down. As the sun sets in the west, I pack my things and head on home, thinking about tomorrow's journey as I try these streets alone. It's my daily tribulation, oh yeah, searching for liberation, yeah. Got to step out of Babylon, take a step to Mount Zion. Days are getting so hard, yeah, but I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, yeah, working till sun goes down, sun goes down. Oh, days are getting so hard, yeah, but I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, working till sun goes down, sun goes down, sun goes. On this 9 to 5, yeah, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, yeah, working till sun goes down. Oh Lord, got to keep working, got to keep working.